On dawn in 1861 was the lungs of the world, and those lungs were congested. The Southwark side of the River Thames, specifically Tooley Street, was a labyrinth of sufferance wharves. These were massive, cavernous brick warehouses packed to the rafters with the spoils of the British Empire. If you walked down Tooley Street that Saturday afternoon, the air would have been a dizzying cocktail of smells. Russian tallow, great casks of animal fat used for candles and soap, hemp and jute, massive bales from India, dry as tinder, spices, piles of peppercorns, cinnamon and turmeric from the east, sugar and molasses, sticky combustible barrels from the West Indies. At Cotton's Wharf, the sheer density of wealth was staggering, but there was a fatal flaw in the Victorian design. To maximize space, the warehouses were built high and deep, with thick walls but wooden floors soaked in decades of leaked oils and grease. They were, in essence, giant chimneys waiting for a spark. At 5 p.m., as laborers were preparing to head home for their Saturday evening ale, a thin ribbon of smoke began to curl from the third floor of Cotton's Wharf. A warehouseman named Smith noticed it first. He didn't panic. In 1861, small fires were common. He grabbed a bucket of water, but when he opened the door to the storage room, he didn't find a small flame. He found a backdraft in its infancy. The oxygen rushed in, and the room exhaled a roar of heat that singed his eyebrows off. The cry went out. Fire! The word traveled like an electric shock through the crowded docks. At the nearby fire station, the London Fire Engine Establishment, LFEE, was alerted. This wasn't a government service. It was a private force funded by insurance companies. And at its head was a man who was already a legend, James Braidwood. James Braidwood was a man of cold logic and hot courage. A Scotsman with a stern face and a scientific mind, he had literally written the book on firefighting. Before him, men stood back and threw water at the outside of buildings. Braidwood taught his men to go outside, to find the seat of the fire and kill it at the heart. When Braidwood arrived at Tooley Street at 6 p.m., he didn't see a routine call. He saw a nightmare. The heat was already so intense that the lead gutters on the roofs were melting, dripping down like silver rain. The floating fire engines, massive pumps mounted on barges on the Thames, were being rowed into position. But the tide was out. The mud of the Thames prevented the barges from getting close enough to the burning wharves. Braidwood stood on the cobbles, his coat dusted with ash. He knew the chemistry of what was inside Cotton's Wharf. He knew that when tallow melts, it turns into a liquid fuel. He knew that when saltpeter, potassium nitrate, heats up, it releases oxygen, feeding the flames from within. "Get the men back," he whispered to his deputy. "The wall is going to go." Braidwood. By 7:30 p.m., the disaster turned surreal. The barrels of tallow and oil had burst. Instead of burning in place, the liquid fire poured out of the warehouse doors like lava. It cascaded down the stone steps and poured into the River Thames. Witnesses described a sight that seemed biblical. The very water of the river appeared to be burning. The layer of oil floated on top of the water, creating a moving carpet of flame that drifted with the tide. Ships anchored in the middle of the river began to catch fire as the burning tide licked at their wooden hulls. Then came the sound, a low, guttural groan of masonry. Braidwood was overseeing a hose line near a massive brick archway. He was handing out brandy to his exhausted men, a common practice of the time to keep their spirits up. He was a leader who never asked a man to do what he wouldn't do himself. Without warning, the 60-foot wall of the warehouse buckled. It didn't crumble. It fell as a single, solid sheet of brick and mortar. "Look out!" someone screamed. The men scrambled. But James Braidwood, the man who had survived 1,000 fires, was pinned beneath the weight of 10,000 bricks. He was killed instantly. The heart of the London Fire Brigade was gone, and the fire was only just beginning.